chaos at a McDonald's over, of all things, Szechuan sauce.
McDonald's was besieged with demands from Rick and Morty fans to bring back the sauce. And they did, but just for one day, and only in select restaurants. They were given just 20 packets each.
Get my sauce! Get my sauce! Get my sauce! Get my sauce! Where's my Szechuan sauce? I'm Pickle Rick! My beloved dum-dum! I'm Pickle Rick!
The past few years have not been too kind to Rick and Morty. From the Szechuan sauce and Pickle Rick epidemics of 2017, to Dan Harmon's questionable takes on incest, to Justin Roiland getting ousted from his own show after being exposed of being a piece of shit. Further proof that this video ages like milk over time. At this point, the show is only a shell of its former self. From being a smart yet comedic show that pioneered adult animation throughout the 2010s, to being the go-to punching bag of the animation industry. There's countless videos online about the tragic rise and fall of Rick and Morty, but that's not what this video is about. I want to talk about something that I barely see anybody cover when talking about the decline of the show, and that's the lore and world building of Rick and Morty. Now for some of you, that sounds bizarre. Rick and Morty is a comedy first and a story-driven show second. Or something along the lines of, what are you talking about? Rick and Morty still cares about its plot and characters. But when you look back on it, things are happening, characters are developing, but it's at a snail pace, and sometimes at the bare minimum. So today, I want to talk about how Rick and Morty's interest in its lore has diminished over time, and how, in a way, it spits in the face of fans who care about the show's overall plot. First off, I would like to talk about the plot progression of Seasons 1 and 2, back when the show was in its prime alongside its writing. Season 1 is your usual Season 1 to any show. Its main goal is to introduce the main characters, side characters, and rules of the world as part of the world building. Additionally, the season also sets in the seeds for future plot lines, such as Evil Morty still inside the Citadel, and Tammy and Bird Person getting engaged. One of the bigger plot beats of Season 1 comes in the 6th episode Rick Potion number 9, where in the end, Rick and Morty do irreversible damage to their universe and have to travel to another one, leaving Morty to have a culture shock on reality. Season 2 follows the same formula, not only introducing newer side characters, but progressing the world building to boot, culminating in the season finale where Rick turns himself in to the Galactic Federation, as well as said Federation taking full control over Earth. This is a gigantic shift in the status quo, leaving endless possibilities for Season 3 to pick up on. And how do you think they handled that? The Season 3 premiere, The Rick Shank Rickdemption, was released over a year after Season 2's finale. With such a long time in between, you think the show would be able to create new ideas based on the new status quo. Nope. Almost everything that was set up in the season finale has now been undone by the end of the premiere. Rick easily breaks out of jail, the Federation backs off from Earth, and that's it. Of course, there are some changes to the status quo. The Council of Ricks are dead, Beth and Jerry get separated, and Summer finds out her Rick and Morty are dead. But the biggest one is in the post-credit scene, where Tammy has reconstructed Bird Person, now as Phoenix Person, who serves under the Galactic Federation. So, just by the premiere alone, we're pretty much back to square one. Only this time, Jerry is living by himself. Which really doesn't make a difference because he still has adventures with his family. However, there is one episode that does progress the plot. The Ricklantis mix-up starts off with Rick and Morty preparing to go to Atlantis in the cold open. After the intro, the episode shifts gears and instead focuses on multiple stories within the Citadel. This includes a take on Stand By Me, a police drama questioning the rationalities of the legal system, and a Morty running for president, which in the end is revealed to be Evil Morty. This is a huge deal since now one of the more major antagonists of the show is in complete power. The penultimate episode, The ABCs of Beth, has Beth having an existential crisis and questions if she's the real Beth or a clone that her father created. So for Season 3's finale, you think the Galactic Federation would make their move against Rick, now that they have his best friend brainwashed. But no, instead it's an episode where Rick toys with the President of the United States, and in the end Beth and Jerry get back together, albeit hastily thrown in at the last minute. That's it. That's the end to Season 3, what many consider to be the lowest point of the show. 4 plot lines are set up for the season, and the one that does get resolved is the one that people have the least interest for. And even that wasn't handled properly. At least there are 3 plot lines that future seasons can progress to interesting directions. Let's just hope that Season 4 does get better with its world building. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. We're going to be jumping right into the 6th episode of Season 4 because the first 5 episodes are self-contained episodes that have no bearing to any of the plot lines introduced in Season 3. And if you've seen Season 4, I think you know where I'm going with this. Never Ricking Morty, the Story Train episode, an inception full of meta on top of meta when it comes to storytelling. There are some funny bits, such as Beth and Summer passing the Bachtel test, but the main issue is how the story conductor sends Rick and Morty to the 5th wall, where they see a possible finale where they battle evil Morty and an army of Rex. Even Summer has a lightsaber battle with Tammy. This scene was heavily featured in the trailer for the second half of the season, but in actuality, this is used as a setup for both Rick and Morty giving up their lives for Jesus, defeating the story conductor in a Deus Ex Machina. I wonder if the writers see their fans wanting to have a gigantic climactic battle between Rick and Morty and evil Morty, and this is their way of telling their fans who care about the lore that it would be too lame. And speaking of things that are lame, that leads us into the Season 4 finale. The finale follows up on the Clone Beth plotline and Tammy controlling Phoenix Person. Turns out Space Beth had been going after the Federation the whole time, something that tries to force these 2 unrelated storylines together. And while the fight between Rick and Phoenix Person is cool, complete with Mortal Kombat X-rays, it's what happens to Tammy that is seen as an insult. Not only does she die as soon as she's cornered, but her corpse is used to complete Jerry's ventriloquist character arc of the episode. Oh, and also, Rick has this line regarding Tammy's absence.
She died the way she lived, over-serialized.
As somebody who had been patiently waiting for this plotline to be developed further, I felt disgusted by this line. It's not my fault that the show never utilized Tammy and Phoenix Person since the Season 3 premiere until this very moment. Not to mention, nearly 20 episodes over 3 years had passed, and this is where the story beat continues and finishes? Now, for people that are into anime, such as myself, waiting that long for a plotline to continue may not seem that long, especially if the wait is 20 episodes. But for an American cartoon catered to an American audience, 20 episodes is a long time, and for it to be wrapped up instantly is a bigger insult. Imagine if in Berserk, after the eclipse, Griffith leaves the story only to return 200 chapters later, where Guts immediately kills him off and then says the raiders who cared about Griffith are dumb and stupid. That's what it feels like. I don't know how many ways I can say the same thing over and over again, but this was the first time I started to lose my trust on Rick and Morty when it came to the overall story of the world building and lore. Season 5, much like 4, starts off with a bunch of self-contained episodes that do admittedly progress character development. More on that later. Instead, the Bird Person plot picks up in Episode 8, Rickternal Friendshine of the Spotless Mort. There's 2 story beats to bring up. Bird Person and Tammy had a daughter who's in jail, and Bird Person leaves Rick to go find his estranged child. We still have not picked up on this plotline at the moment, but I bet my money we're going to see more of it in Season 8, or me being very generous, Season 7. The last 2 episodes of the season do tie together. Well, really, only the last 5 minutes of the 9th episode and the first 5 minutes of the 10th episode do have something in common. Rick having 2 crows does not affect anything in the finale, so if this was the writer's way of trying to tease at an overarching story, they have failed that numerous times, and they're gonna fail again right now. After nearly 15 episodes and 4 years later, we finally get to see what evil Morty's been up to. And it's immediately resolved. Also, portal gun technology doesn't work anymore, there's a yellow rift in space, and the Citadel is destroyed. Evil Morty's plan wasn't that consequential anyway, other than exposing that Ricks have always treated Mortys like shit, and are Rick and Morty learning to be better with one another. So the big twist from Season 3 didn't attribute to anything since Evil Morty was not present in those episodes, and he gets his happy ending.
Evil Morty, can we stop flattering this guy? His plan was to monologue and off. He basically threw a tantrum to announce he was quitting Twitter.
Now that I think about it, what was the purpose of the Councils of Ricks anyway? To give checks and orders regarding the multiverse? Well, they were killed off very easily in Season 3, and now the Citadel is destroyed. we also get a revelation on Rick's backstory, which completely destroys what we knew before. So, do you remember how in Season 3's premiere, the Federation wanted to know how Rick created portal gun tech? It turns out, after Rick lost his family to another Rick, he creates portal gun tech to get revenge. However, it's shortly revealed that Rick fabricated the whole story in order to get the upper hand at the agent that is implanted in his brain. Well, in this episode, the show tells us that no, the backstory really happened, and it's further reinforced in the Season 6 premiere. And while you're probably saying, oh, the only thing that was fabricated in the Season 3 premiere was the formula to make the portal gun tech. And while that's true, Rick has this line to prove my point.
True, but you can alter anything you want about a totally fabricated origin story. Totally fabricated origin story. Totally fabricated origin story. Totally fabricated origin story.
So that was a fucking lie.
So let me get this straight. The show tells us one thing, only to tell us that that's not what happened, only years later to tell us the complete opposite. This is the most ridiculous method of handling storytelling and keeping the audience's trust. This isn't a well-deserved plot twist, this is the show laughing at me for caring about lore and continuity. But you know what? Season 5 did open a few more plot lines to explore. Portal gun tech is gone, Rick Prime is still out there. I'm sure Season 6 will expand on this. Would you like to guess how that turned out? Season 6 starts up where Season 5 ended, and I'll admit the episode is a good premiere. Rick and Morty go back to their respective universes and noticed how they changed for the worse. But at the end of the episode, Rick has a new goal: find Rick Prime and avenge his family. In the post-credits scene, we see Rick Prime has also killed Cronenberg Jerry as well. So it looks like Season 6 is at least trying to put our characters in newer situations. But it all goes out the window when we get to the next story beat. So, remember how Season 5 ended with there being a giant rift in space and portal gun tech was destroyed? Well, 6 episodes later, both of these conflicts are resolved in the most anticlimactic way possible, all because Rick was jealous at intelligent skateboarding space dinosaurs. So all of the mystery and tension that the last season ended on is now completely useless. We don't even see how Rick repaired portal gun tech, it all happens off screen. And once more, the show barely brought up these plot points, and whenever they were addressed, they were resolved almost instantly. The portal gun especially, this was Rick's go-to weapon since the start of the show, and the fact that he repairs it out of pure spite robs any dynamic situations Rick could have been in without his signature win button. Well, anyway, the penultimate episode once again ties into the season finale, though here it's much more tighter than it was last season. Since we still have one more plotline introduced in Season 5, maybe Season 6 should touch on it. Season 6 begins with Rick trying to hunt down Rick Prime, and Season 6 ends with Rick trying to hunt down Rick Prime. Great! We spent the whole season starting and ending in the exact same position. That's not even bringing up how they also damaged Rick's character in Season 6. In the finale, it's revealed that the Rick we saw in the penultimate episode was an android while the real Rick was in search mode. If the season hinted earlier at this twist, then fine, but because it didn't, this feels like a total ass pull. So what have we learned at the end of the day regarding Season 6? Rick Prime is still out there, and Rick has to kill him. And you know something? We're in the exact same position we were in Season 3. The premiere sets up a new threat for Rick and Morty, and it goes absolutely nowhere throughout the season. And considering how the writers wasted 2 major antagonists of the show, I'm betting my money they're shooting for 3. And that's where the show is so far. We have already squandered an instance where there is a change in the status quo. 2 major villains are written out of the show as soon as they return to the plot, and now we have a new threat that will probably go nowhere for 3 seasons and gets resolved almost instantly. One thing I noticed was that the past 3 seasons have been progressing and concluding plot lines, but only in season finales. You had 9 other episodes that could help develop the world building, and yet the plot lines are all thrown together in 1 episode at the end. It's almost like the writers are trying to say to the audiences, see, we are progressing the plot further by the end of the season, only out of obligation. What they should have done instead was have the earlier episodes tie into the lore. That way there's more build up to the season finale. For example, in the episode where the family gets a giant combiner mech, how about have evil Morty send an alien to Earth and the Smiths have to battle it. In the end, Rick finds out that Evil Morty is still around. Not only does it retain that the episode is still a self-contained story that parodies giant robot tokusatsu shows, but builds up on the overarching story of Evil Morty continuing his plans. But no, instead, let's remind the audiences that Summer and Morty have a giant inbred space baby named Naruto. I didn't even want to bring that up, but I have no choice now. That was introduced not even 4 episodes before this one. Same thing with the Rift in Season 6. You could have had a giant creature emerge from the Rift, and Rick would have to find a way to sustain it without his trusty portal gun. Instead, there's not a single episode that brings up either of these conflicts in between the 1st and 6th episode of the season, almost as if they never mattered to begin with. And if that's the case, then why set it up to be a big deal at the end of Season 5? Alright, look, I know some people watching this video will say, but Rick and Morty at least has character development from season to season, and you know what? That's true. Summer, Beth, Jerry, and Morty have all become much more confident people than they were in Season 1. Heck, I would say Rick has opened up more to his family, but with the android twist in Season 6, I can't make that compliment yet. However, while the characters have progressed over time, I can't say the same with the world's building and lore. You can't have one without the other. Look at Breaking Bad. Not a single character at the end of the series is the same person they were in Season 1. Why? Because not only did they develop, but the setting and situations they were placed in always changed. Rick and Morty has character development, but not story development. We're still on Earth with little to no changes, except for in the current universe, they pronounce Parmesan differently. Remember how in the first season, Morty was mortified to know that the family he left behind is gone forever once hopping universes. Now it's seen as a cheap way to make a joke that has no overall impact to the plot. The only new inclusion to the continuity is that Space Beth is now part of the family. 6 seasons in, and we finally have a new member of the Smith residence. Whoop-de-frickin-do! So that is the sad state of Rick and Morty and its disrespect to the lore and world that it built. But if there's one thing I want to address, is that I want this show to get better. In 2017, the show was picked up for 70 more episodes. There's still 40 episodes that the show can recover on. And I know a lot of people are saying that Rick and Morty should not have a plot because it's a show on Adult Swim, a programming block created to Stone's audiences in the middle of the night. And while that's true, there have been shows on Adult Swim that not only make the audiences laugh, but give them something to think on. So while shows with no plot like Robot Chicken, Squidbillies, and 12 Ounce Mouse exist, as a contrast, there are shows like Moral Oral, Venture Brothers, and Boondocks that give ideas audiences can think on while enjoying the show. Rick and Morty should have been in that latter group, but that was never really developed. It's been 10 years since the show started, and it feels like most of the time it's been spinning its tires. I think the reason why Rick and Morty got popular was because it began the same year Futurama ended. Maybe people flocked to it because they wanted another adult animated series with a science fiction theme. But since Futurama is coming back, and it being a show that does respect its characters and lore, do we still need Rick and Morty anymore? Again, whenever Season 7 comes out, if it comes out, I'll still watch the show, hoping something changes. But for now, I'm AJ, and I am in great pain, please help me. Or as Rick said would be his new catchphrase at the end of Season 1, I don't give a fuck.